Most people think of money as a constant, a yardstick that never changes length. But in reality, the yardstick is shrinking every single day. If you look at a chart of the US dollar's purchasing power since 1913, it doesn't look like a currency. It looks like a tech stock that crashed and never recovered. It has lost over 95% of its value. But why? This isn't an accident. It's a feature of the system. We are currently living through what macro investors call the debasement trade. It is a global shift where the world's most sophisticated capital is moving out of currency and into things. Today, we're going to look under the hood of the global financial engine to see why it's smoking, and why the people in charge have no choice but to keep flooring the gas. In the old days, debasement was physical. You'd clip the edges off a silver coin. Today, it's much more elegant. It happens through a process called quantitative easing, QE, and open market operations. When the government wants to spend money it doesn't have, it issues debt in the form of treasury bonds. Usually people or other countries buy that debt, but when the debt gets too big, there aren't enough buyers. This is where the central bank, the Federal Reserve, steps in. They create digital dollars and use them to buy those government bonds. This does two things. It lowers interest rates, making it cheaper for the government to borrow. And it floods the banking system with new cash. The debasement trade is the realization that once a country starts this cycle, it is almost impossible to stop. If they stop printing, interest rates spike, the stock market crashes, and the government goes bankrupt. So they keep printing. This is the liquidity trap. Up until now, we've talked about the central bank printing money. But there is a second, even more powerful engine of debasement that lives inside your local bank branch. It's called fractional reserve banking. Most people believe that when they deposit $1,000 into a bank, that money sits in a vault waiting for them. That is a myth. In reality, the bank is only required to keep a tiny fraction of that money, historically 10%. But in many modern systems like the US since 2020, that requirement has effectively dropped to zero. Here's how the money multiplier works. You deposit $1,000, the bank keeps $100 in reserve and lends out $900 to a small business owner. That business owner pays a contractor who then deposits that $900 into their bank. That bank keeps $90 and lends out $810. In just a few steps, your original $1,000 has mathematically turned into thousands of dollars of new commercial bank money. This isn't paper cash, it's digital credit. And since 2020, the bank essentially doesn't even have that 10% on hand anymore. The debasement trade isn't just about the government printing to pay for wars. It's about a system where debt is money, in a fractional reserve system. If everyone stopped borrowing, the money supply would actually shrink, which would lead to a depression. Therefore, the system requires a constant expansion of credit to stay solvent. When you hear macro investors talk about liquidity, they aren't just talking about the Fed. They're talking about the ability of this massive banking machine to keep pumping out new loans. The trade here is realizing that we are trapped in a cycle where the total amount of digital dollars must grow faster than the amount of actual stuff we produce. If you hold your wealth in the very thing being multiplied into infinity, you are on the wrong side of the math. Let's look at the math, because the math is what drives the trade. We are entering an era of fiscal dominance. This occurs when a government's debt is so high, the central bank can't raise interest rates without causing the government to default on its debt payments. Think about that. Interest rates are 5%, and you have $35 trillion in debt. Your interest payment alone is $1.7 trillion a year. That's more than the entire defense budget. To pay that interest, what does the government do? They borrow more money. This is the death spiral. As an investor, if you hold a 10-year bond, you are essentially lending money to a borrower who has to borrow more just to pay you the interest. This makes the real value of that bond go down, even if the nominal number stays the same. The debasement trade is a bet that inflation must stay higher than interest rates for the foreseeable future to burn off this debt. How does the government get away with this? Through something called financial repression. This is a fancy term for stealing your purchasing power to pay for government spending. By keeping interest rates at, say, 3%, while actual inflation is at 6%, the government is effectively taxing every saver 3% of their wealth every year. It's a transfer of wealth from the savers, you, to the debtors, the government. In this environment, Holding cash is a losing game. This is why you see billionaires buying up farmland, art, and tech companies. They aren't trying to beat the market as much as they are trying to escape the currency. If you're convinced the currency is being debased, where do you go? There are three main lifeboats. Gold. Gold is the only financial asset that is not someone else's liability. It cannot be printed, and it has outlived every empire in history. Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first scarce digital asset. Unlike gold, you can send any amount, even fractions of a Bitcoin, across the world in minutes for a tiny fee. Its 21 million unit cap makes it the hardest money ever created. Equities. People often forget that stocks are a debasement trade. If the dollar loses 50% of its value, a company like Apple will simply double the price of an iPhone. The stock price reflects that nominal growth. The debasement trade isn't a doomsday theory. It's a mathematical reality of the current monetary system. Since we left the gold standard in 1971, we have lived in an era of pure fiat. And as history shows, no fiat currency lasts forever. So, does this mean the money system collapses tomorrow? No, it can go on for decades. But it means that the rules of the 20th century, save your money in a bank, buy bonds, and retire, no longer work. In an age of debasement, you don't win by saving. You win by owning assets that the government cannot print. Understand this game, or you'll be the one paying for it. The debasement trade isn't about greed. It's about survival in a system that is mathematically programmed to devalue your labor. The invisible tax of inflation is real, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. But the real question is, what are you doing about it? Everyone's strategy is different depending on their age, their goals, and their risk tolerance. I want to hear from you in the comments. What is your #1 move to protect your purchasing power? Are you sticking with the tradition of gold? Are you moving into the digital scarcity of Bitcoin? Are you betting on cash-flowing real estate? Be sure to leave a comment, and let's start a conversation about how we navigate this together. Don't forget to like this video if it helped you see the invisible tax. And subscribe for more deep dives into the global macro game. I'll see you in the next one.